Welcome to the Well Club, where the journey to wellness begins. Take a deep breath, open your mind, and join us as we explore the endless possibilities of well-being. Here's Dr. Rob Douk.
My guest today is Sam Tejada, the CEO of Liquivida and the author of How to Win in Modern Wellness. As a former firefighter turned wellness entrepreneur, Sam brings a unique perspective on integrative health and preventative care, focusing on empowering individuals to take control of their well-being through practical, science-backed strategies. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doc. Thanks for having me here.
Man, I am so excited to just kind of dig into your story on how you started as a firefighter and now you're a wellness entrepreneur. Let's start there. Can you tell us how that journey was?
Yeah, man. So, I worked as a firefighter paramedic in emergency medical services. Here in South Florida, everyone's duly trained as a firefighter and a paramedic, regardless if you're on the fire truck or if you're on the rescue truck. And, I started at a young age. I did that for 12 years. I started at the age of 20 and I retired by age 32. And the reason why I retired is because I got into a whole nother line of work, still in the medical field. And the business took off and I've been retired. I'm 37 now, so I've been retired for 5 years. But the way I got into it, man, I was always into health, wellness, sports. I used to compete in the world of bodybuilding, doing men's physique, got nationally qualified. And I always had that passion for really helping people in a time of need. And once I graduated high school at the age of 18, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to have the most rewarding job possible that's out there. And what would be the what wouldn't be the most rewarding job versus being a firefighter paramedic? You're that hero saving people in a time of need. What I didn't know is that it wasn't the most rewarding job. It was only about 10% of the 911 calls that I was getting that were, those life-saving calls, ripping somebody out of a burning vehicle, running into a burning building and grabbing someone. 90% of the calls were these medical emergencies, a lot of these acute and also chronic medical emergencies. And over a 12-year period of time, you actually start to notice people circling down the drain, right? You see exactly when they first start having these type of acute illnesses, and you're transporting them to the hospital once every year. And then all of a sudden you're transporting them to the hospital once every other month. And then you're transporting them to the hospital every other week to then
Yeah.
every other day. So then that's why I told myself, I said, you know what? Our medical system is failing people. It's time to actually do something where people could take that proactive, preventative approach to their health and wellness. And that's how I got into it.
Yeah. And I bet some of these people, were repeat customers, that you probably saw time and time again. And it could have just been it's just as easy as education on how to hydrate and how to do some preventative type things. Is that why the passion really grew for you? Because you're seeing, hey, look, maybe I'm getting a little bit tired of coming after the fact, right? And reacting to some of these health issues that could have been prevented.
So, Doc, on my days off from the fire department, so firefighters, we work 24 hours on, we're off for 48 hours. So you have two choices on your days off. You either can find a side hustle and supplement your income, or you just spend a little bit of money you get from the city, right? And on my days off, what I was doing early on, I was working with a company called Centogenics. They're the pioneers in alternative medicine, doing hormone optimization, the executive physicals. Now, those patients that I would go see every 3 months, these are some of the most affluent people on this globe that they were able to afford these expensive doctors. But I was seeing what these patients were doing, and most of it, didn't really have that value, that dollar amount of what they were paying. Most of it was education. So when I would tell people about, because I was in a very inner city, it was a metropolitan inner city where I worked as a firefighter. Most people says, well, it's too expensive to be healthy. Only the rich and famous can be healthy. And I said, that's absolutely incorrect. It's not just the rich and famous. This comes down to being able to educate them on what they need to eat, how they need to move their bodies. And a lot of this stuff can be prevented, a lot of these illnesses.
Mm. Do you mention some of those things in your book? Like what kind of quick takeaways from How to Win in Modern Wellness is a book that you've put out. What are some kind of key highlights that you want to highlight for our listeners today?
Yes. So, How to Win in Modern Wellness, which is this book here. As you can see, there's a bunch of different faces in the front of it. So, when I got into the industry and into this preventative health industry, it was a very cutthroat mentality. The competition was always against each other. And I told myself, I said, if we're all out here chanting that we want to change the course of medicine, well, we got to come together and create that one strong voice. Because if we don't, we're up against, big food companies, big pharma, and
Right.
all of these big people that have deep pockets. So what I did, I ended up building relationships with my competitors. So all of those faces that you see in the front of that book are some of the top names in the industry that have some of the biggest companies when it comes to preventative health. And what I did, I give a chapter to each and one of these CEOs or doctors. I have attorneys, marketers, and we're all talking about how we're winning together in this world of modern wellness and the different technologies, devices, and things that people can do to actually be healthy.
What are some simple key things that maybe somebody can take away from um, some of this modern wellness strategies or ideas and be able to apply very simply?
So, the one thing that I put a lot of emphasis on is data, understanding your own personal health data. And it doesn't have to be this overwhelming, doing all this crazy blood work and genetic testing. Those things are great. Don't get me wrong. But basic health data, getting a body composition analysis, you can go to most of your local gyms and they'll put you on an in-body machine for completely for free. So now it's not about just learning about what your total weight is. It's about what is that weight made up of, right? Percentage of visceral fat, intracellular, extracellular fat, how much lean muscle you have. Um, Other things that you can have personally, like any of your wearables, right? Your Apple Watch, the Whoop, Aura Ring. I wear my Aura Ring wherever I go. And be able to understand your own personal health data on a daily basis and how you can make certain adjustments so you have a less stressful and healthier life. So those are some of the things that I talk about in the book as well too, of understanding your own personal health data and then creating some of your wellness programs where they're more personalized to you as an individual.
I love that. I love that. And I think in modern medicine and when you look at health and wellness with where it's trending right now, these technologies and tools are at our disposal now. It's sometimes overwhelming, right? It's now getting folks like you to guide people on how to analyze that data and put that data to use so you can kind of start running some baseline, data on where I'm at and where I want to go and what is healthy, right? Because everybody's bodies reacts differently to certain things and having an awareness and understanding of that. We talk a lot about that also on my platform and why there's I think some similarities here with the 9 dimensions of wellness because we look at wellness from a holistic standpoint. There's so many like you where you're pulling together all these experts for your book. I think we can all learn from one another. And similarly in wellness, we've taken a holistic approach in that way too when we're looking at it's not just emotional wellness or physical wellness, but even financial wellness to career wellness and creative wellness and all these other things. And we similarly look at data to see kind of where you're at, where your baseline is within those domains of like mind, body, and spirit, right? And from there, you kind of can start with having a roadmap or a target with where am I lacking and where can I improve and where do I go to learn that? And so our platform is very much like kind of the Netflix of holistic wellness, where there's tons of master classes where you can infuse and learn more about the areas that you might be lacking. So
I
I
love that.
I'm
I
I'm
love
I'm
that.
with you. I'm with you with when it comes to that. So you also have a podcast called A Healthy Point of View. So are these the topics that you're talking about? And what was like one of the most interesting discussions you've had this year so far?
So to begin with, I'm going to say you're absolutely right when it comes to different verticals of wellness. Right, you got financial wellness, you have mindset wellness, you got spiritual wellness, and those are things that on the podcast. And there's a reason why I came up with the name A Healthy Point of View, because we can really talk about anything that's going to have a healthy point of view for your life. And I've had people, certified financial planners on my podcast. I've had people that come in and talk about mental health, mindset. I've
Sure.
had doctors talk about their spirituality and go deep into those conversations as well. But how you said, it's something that should be data driven. If you have a business, right, and you want to scale your business, you're not going to have a successful business if you're not looking at your P&L statements, right?
Yes,
And you're
right.
not looking at those bank accounts on a daily basis. So the same way that we look and see exactly what's happening data-wise for our companies to scale, same thing we have to do with our body, right? We have to go ahead and do blood work. We have to see if we have any deficiencies, hormone imbalances, and then from there correct them accordingly.
I love that. I think I've had the great fortune being within behavioral health as a behavioral analyst, a board certified behavior analyst, because I've been trained exactly what you just said, to build a treatment plan based off of data, things that are observable and measurable, to the extreme, and
Right.
I've approached that and brought that to the business world as well. Like without a solid business plan, without like envisioning where that's going to go and how to measure those things through KPIs and whatnot, you're kind of, you know, drawing blanks and, waiting for someone to tell you and react to problems that arise, right? So
Right.
I love that. I think where we're headed is in a direction where we're educating people to take control of their health and wellness, because they're becoming more aware of what to look out for. And so, um, it's fascinating to read about what you're doing with your company as well. I think the name is amazing. It's kind of a tongue twister for me, but let me say it again. You founded and grew Liquivida. Yeah, did I say
Liquidity,
that
that's
right?
right. Yep.
Liquivida. Tell us a little bit about that. It's a similar story that I had. I think you started out with like $500, and you've really like bootstrapped this and really grown it without investors coming in. What has that journey been like, and where are you at now?
Yeah, so Liquivida, we started as an IV vitamin therapy company. And the way I started it was on my days off from the fire department. Same company that I was working part-time with, Cenogenics, those same very affluent clients. They had homes, not just here in South Florida, but they had homes in California, Colorado. And I started hearing them talk about these IV vitamin therapies and how it's really helped them correct some of their issues. And these were done with some of the functional medicine doctors back in California and Colorado. And when I had like the fifth patient tell me about this, and the thing that they had in common was that the technician that was doing it was a firefighter paramedic doing it on their days off. So, obviously that resonated with myself as a firefighter paramedic. And I said, yeah, let me look and see what this is all about. I saw what was going to be my competition. Most of them actually became my customers now. I saw what they were doing. I said, you know what? I can do this and I can do it better. I can make it where people actually want to go and get these IV drips, right? There's a branding perspective. There's an experience perspective behind it of how when they come in, how they feel. If it's more like a spa feel, or is it going to feel like a hospital where people, it's cold, people are screaming, people are dying. People don't want that. So I started the company with $500 in my back pocket. I teamed up with a chiropractor that integrated medical into his wellness facility, and it was called East West Physicians, where the chiropractor, what he did was basically integrate Eastern medicine and Western medicine together and created this beautiful facility where he did everything from acupuncture. He was doing medical pain management. He was doing hydroclonic therapies, massage therapies, lasers, everything you could think of. Well, he had this beautiful big size room in the back that was supposed to be for physical therapy. He didn't have a physical therapist. So I threw him an offer. I said, hey, doc, got this room back here collecting dust. How about if I come back here on my days off from the fire department? I operate this business that I want to launch, this IV nutrition business. And you provide the medical oversight. You're already paying for all of the utilities. Let me use your front desk to answer a few phone calls, but I'll work with the actual patients and I'll give you 20% of whatever I do. His eyes lit up. So
Yeah.
for him, it was like, hey, I got this young guy who's ready to put in the money and work the business every day, and I get 20% for doing nothing. It's a no brainer. So I did that, and it was supposed to be a side hustle just to kind of like supplement my income. But
Mhm.
eventually, after a few months, I started getting people driving an hour and a half to get these IV drips.
Wow.
Where I said, man, I think we got something. So
Yeah.
from there, we developed into a bigger facility where we actually did a Liquivida storefront. Today, we're a full-blown wellness center where we do everything from regenerative medicine. We do the wellness services like hormone optimization, medically supervised weight loss. We have a whole medical aesthetics division where we're using the different neurotoxins, fillers, and a bunch of other different technologies. We have a whole sexual health division where we have different technologies and treatments that we do for both males and females when it comes to sexual health. And these are beautiful facilities where we have all the different technologies to get the data as well. DEXA scan, VO2 max, RMR, max pulse, you name it, we have it there.
So what can someone expect when they first come in and they're just like, there's a whole slew of options, but what would you recommend for someone to try first? Is it just the kind of the hydration aspect of it? Like where's a good place to start?
No, the first place to start is having that initial consultation, which this is not like your general practitioner doctor that you're so used to, which you get like about 5 to 7 minutes with. I mean, what we're doing here is our goal is to first understand who you are, understand your lifestyle, do a very thorough assessment, and figure out how much stress you have in your life. Are you sleeping properly? How much toxins are you getting exposed through environment, food? Is it from your work that you do? Are you a firefighter inhaling toxic chemicals every single day? Are you a police officer who's going to the shooting range every week and breathing in lead? Right. So for us, is really figuring out what's going on if you to see if you have any kind of medical complaints, any kind of signs or symptoms. And then from there, we start putting you through the different diagnostics to then create a treatment regimen to make you better with your health.
I love that. And I mean, you've come a long way. I mean, you're now the chairman of the American IV Association, and you've got some big ideas about that, I'm sure. What does that new role entail as you're kind of as clearly a visionary within this space? What are some things that we could be expecting from this industry?
Yeah, so didn't get into this thinking that I would, get appointed as the chairman of the association for the industry. But, once I launched my book and brought a lot of these great minds together and started really building up not just my company brand, but also my personal brand and speaking on stage at a lot of these medical conferences, a lot of these biohacking conferences. Well, I became the face of the industry. So the American IV Association was put together by Jeff Cohen and a few of his associates. He's one of the leading healthcare attorneys in the alternative medicine space, has over 35 years of experience. In the American IV Association for about a year and a half, um, what was operating, but really wasn't tapping into the industry the way that they wanted to. And that's because they didn't have the buy-in from the industry. The industry felt like they were kind of being sold on it. So now myself and a few other CEOs, we knew that this was the right thing. So what we ended up doing, we sat down and we talked with Jeff Cohen and his team, and they ended up putting a leadership advisory board together. And that leadership advisory board consists of myself, Ben Crosby, who's the CEO of Drip Bar. They've sold over 600 locations throughout the nation. And then Sarah Lomas, who is the CEO of Revive, and she's in 47 different countries around the world. So all three of us getting on that leadership advisory board, right? The leadership advisory board, and then me being the chairman, just because I'm really the guy behind the camera and the guy with the relationships. People saw that and they saw, okay, this is not biased to one company or one person. This is impartial. This is for the industry. And then what we did is we put the founding members board together, which consists of approximately 20 other founding members, which are other leaders in the industry. So we have people like we have 10X Health, right? Grant Cardone's company. They sit as one of the founding members. We have Live Hydration. They have tens of locations throughout the nation. So, and then we have pharmacies. And then what we ended up doing is we ended up putting our scientific advisory board together, which the scientific advisory board consists of many of our chief medical officers, a few MDs, DOs, PhDs, and also PharmDs. And our goal is to create compliance and standardization across the board. So, and one of the things, Doc, the reason why we want to do that is that when it comes to a lot of the functional medicine space and a lot of alternative treatments that are done, a lot of the things we do is off-label use. They're not necessarily things that have been fully approved by the FDA, and that's because there's a lot of money that's needed for research purposes and everything else. So for us was instead of allowing the regulatory bodies out there to start regulating us, and a lot of these people that run these regulatory bodies out there are people that have absolutely no medical background. So for us, we said, you know what? We want to govern ourselves. Let's go ahead and start structuring things so we can present it to the regulators instead of working against them and butting heads. Let's work with them and provide them the information they need so they can hold other people in the industry accountable.
I love that. I think these are like the foundational steps to get it to there. Kind of reminds me of the autism market when I first entered it, and people didn't really know a whole lot about autism or how it should be funded. It was primarily being funded through the regional centers in California at the time. Is your model right now, it's, kind of outpatient, and people are funding it themselves, right, through subscriptions and what have you, and is there like a push as you become more regulated to kinda get this into like a traditional kind of medical model where insurance carriers will eventually, pick it up or not really, part of the
Um,
path?
yeah, I don't think we've gotten that far yet to entertain insurance picking it up. That would be nice down the line. I think that is part of the bigger picture with the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, with RFK Jr. and what Donald Trump is doing. And that's something that we're working very closely with a lot of people within that circle. But that will take some time. So our focus right now is it's out of pocket pay. Our goal is to make it affordable, not just for the rich and famous, but make it affordable for the masses. For the blue collar and people to be able to get educated from our different platforms where they don't necessarily have to come in and spend you know hundreds or thousands of dollars to get services done. Yeah, there's a lot of things that can be done naturally. But when it comes to what you were mentioning about making this more of mainstream medicine and kind of changing that course of medicine. That is the ultimate goal because medicine has always been so disease focused. It's been more a algorithmic process. Well, if you have this, then this is what you need. You need this pill. So for us, it's kind of focusing more on metabolic health and making sure we're optimizing your insides and allow your body to be able to perform at the peak levels that it should be.
Yeah, and I love that. I think you're really at the forefront of tackling that. And we know a lot about the mind body connection, and I feel like there's more and more literature connecting this kind of third domain of the spiritual wellness, and I think you've had people speak on that. How has that, how are you incorporating that into your own personal, overall wellness? You got the mind body, but the whole spiritual wellness. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they're all connected, right? People have to understand, regardless what you believe in when it comes to spirituality, is that there's a higher power, right? At the point in time that you're able to recognize that and accept that, and you're able to connect with the higher power, um, you will just see a shift in your own personal well-being. So, mindset is big. Your mind is a very powerful thing. Joe Dispenza talks about it a lot. And there's a lot of things that you can do with your mind. The power of meditation and how you control your mind with meditation is unbelievable. Your body, I tell everyone, it's in the Bible. I'm a Christian. Your body is the temple of God. You have to treat it as so. So a lot of these vices that people expose themselves to, that just causes a magnitude of other problems that will develop, not just disease, but mental health issues and everything else. So the spiritual connection is extremely important. That's something that people have to understand that there is a higher power. And I'll tell you a story. I had a guy on my podcast just last week. He goes by his spiritual name of Ocean Eagle, and he didn't believe in a higher power. He had no spiritual belief until he had his calling. And he had a coach that told him, says, "Oh, you don't believe there's a higher power." Took him to the beach, right? And told him to kneel down. It was around nighttime. He says, "You don't believe that there's something greater than you?" And the guy told him, says, "Okay, if there's nothing greater than you, do me a favor. Move the ocean. Move it." And that's where he recognized, he says, he's not moving that ocean. Something else can move that ocean. And that's where he realized there is a greater power out there. Is guess what? That ocean can come in and flood everything. That ocean can move. There's someone else who's in control of that. And it isn't us.
That's right. That's so good. Because everybody who's kind of looking at you from outside in, they're seeing kind of your personal brand, the success that you've had, this trajectory that you're on, and you're so convicted and focused. Oftentimes they don't know where that driving force is and what's feeding that. Some might not even know that I believe your parents brought you from the Dominican Republic, right, to be in this country. And so, how have you relied on, the renewal of your mind, taking care of your body as a temple, but the spiritual wellness piece of it when you're developing and charting new territories, even within like within the IV association, those sorts of things. Can you share a little bit about there's things that you're called to, things that you're just chosen for, and things that you're convicted by, a little bit for our listeners, how that's kind of played a role in your journey.
Yeah. So what I tell people when they ask me about how I make certain decisions, a lot of life-changing decisions, right? Because even when it comes to business and you make a decision of a new partnership, a new position, chairman of the American IV Association, you have to decide if you want to do it or not. And I'm not the guy who makes the decision with my head, right? I make the decision with my heart. When you get that intuition, that gut feeling that where it's in you, that's that Holy Spirit. That's your soul, which is the higher power speaking through you. I tell people the devil loves to come here and play, right? Because even when we do something wrong and we know it was wrong, right? That's because the devil is attacking your mind. But the Holy Spirit lives here within your heart. And I follow that feeling. When I make a decision and I know it's the right decision, it's coming from that spiritual connection between myself and God. Now, to have that spiritual connection, there's things that I do to further develop that and to maintain it, right? It's just like anything else. You have to maintain things. You got to maintain your car. You got to maintain your health. You got to maintain your spiritual connection with God as well, too. And that for me is, prayer, praying every day, connecting with God every day, speaking to God, throughout my day. And that's how I have built that strong spirituality, that strong spiritual connection with the higher power.
I love that. And because a lot of people miss out on that. They just see the success. They just see that this is a man who's been bold and brave, but fear is normal in everybody. And I think and what I'm hearing from you as you pray and as you connect with God, you're able to overcome, difficulties in life, right? While you're anchoring in faith over this fear. Um, and so that's very apparent in how you've been navigating your journey so far. So I'm excited to kind of see where you're headed next. How can people get a hold of you and learn more about what you're up to, and um, share a little bit about kind of where's the best place to go to?
Yeah, so very easy. You could just Google me, Sam Tejada, and you'll find tons of great information. Or you could go to my personal website, samtejada.com. Our company page to learn more about this health and wellness services that we offer throughout the nation. It's called liquivida.com. And then I post consistently on all the social media platforms. We have podcasts where people fly in from all over the world to participate on my podcast. Experts, in the health and wellness and biohacking space that come on as guests. And you can find me on Instagram, which is Sammy, SAMMY _Tejada, TEJADA. and you'll see a lot of great content. And my goal is to really get the content out there and spread this information to the masses.
Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate you being on the show, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And best of luck to you.
Likewise. Thanks, Doc.
This has been the Well Club. Remember that wellness is not a destination, but a continuous path of growth and self-discovery. To learn more about Dr. Rob Douk, go to drdouk.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and always remember to nurture your well-being. The Well Club is a production of Forbes Books.